Hi, this is Joe Hage. I have the privilege of leading your medical devices group, which, as of this recording, has 348,000 members worldwide. And John is one of our most popular speakers. Every time we have him, hundreds sign up, as is represented by today's webinar. John is going to talk to us about quality as an accelerator and tell us how technology can speed up your product development efforts. John, the floor is yours.
Joe, thank you very much, and we thank you so much for the opportunity to do a webinar, especially knowing your presence in this medical device community. You do fantastic things for this industry, and we love being a part of your efforts, so appreciate that. As Joe said, I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about quality as an accelerator. And I think as we get into this, there's some conventional myths and wisdom that we're going to dispel a bit. I think sometimes we look at a quality management system as kind of a must-have, kind of a checkbox, something that regulators require. And I think sometimes we forget that at the end of the day, we're running businesses, we're bringing medical products to market, we want them to be as safe and effective as possible. And our quality management system should actually support that rather than prevent that or inhibit that in any way, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So the key theme, kind of the subcontext of this entire presentation is shift happens. And for those of you that are paying attention or have been in the medical device industry for any period of time at all, you know that within the past 18 to 36 months, we've had a lot of changes in our space, and that's only going to continue. And all the while, we're all faced with this challenge of compliance, and more specifically non-compliance, and how big of a deal non-compliance can be to the trajectory of our businesses. And so much so that if you have non-compliance concerns, it can be more than a black eye in the industry. It can literally put you out of business if you're not doing things properly. And just something to think about. This is just a stat from McKinsey about the cost of non-compliance issues. If you get to a point where you have products on the market and you have to do some sort of recall, it's not inconceivable to think that a recall can be in the millions of dollars. So I think that's really something to consider. 43 observations from like an FDA inspection, those are serious enough, and they're still in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, or can be, certainly as you get into that. So, non-compliance is certainly a risky business. It's certainly costly from a dollars and cents standpoint. And why does this matter? I mean, yeah, all of you are probably either in the process of being ISO certified or registered as med device companies with FDA. If you're in the medical device industry, you're going to be subjected to audits either from an ISO perspective and or from an FDA perspective. And it's important to know what's happening from a regulatory standpoint, because these agencies, their job is to protect healthcare consumers. And if you're not doing things the way they would expect and have the documentation and the processes and procedures to go along with that, well, you know what, that could be problematic from a compliance standpoint, and as I just shared with you, a little bit expensive from the dollars and cents standpoint, but more importantly, it's going to also impact your resources internally. You may have to hire additional capacity. Your efforts towards new product development and streamlining manufacturing processes may have to be put on hold because now you got to deal with some sort of non-compliance issue. And I think it's very quick to think, especially for those outside the United States, that those FDA issues, even though you may be registered with FDA, those FDA concerns about inspections, that's only for people in the United States. Well, you'd be wrong, and this is a trend that is continuing to increase. You can look at FDA data year after year after year, and certainly for the past 5 years, it is very clear the trend is that FDA has an increasing emphasis on foreign device manufacturers. In fact, so much so that there are strategic initiatives in place to actually do a better job, a more thorough job of doing more foreign device inspections, so keep that in mind. Part of the other challenges with our industry, part of that shift happens piece is, well, 1345. That changed a little over a year and a half ago. And many of you, if you're going through the ISO audits and certification processes, you probably have either been certified to the new version of the standard, or you will be soon. And so that's had some impact on your QMS. And then more recently, the medical device regulations and IVD regulations became law in Europe. And so that's something that's also part of the shift. You know, I want you all to just kind of wrap your head around that, and certainly as we get into the conversation or the presentation today, if you have some questions about these things, we'll dive into it. But one of the things I wanted to kind of give you a bit of a teaser, we've been asked at Greenlight.Guru to work with BSI. Many of you probably know BSI, registrar, notified body in our space, but they have asked us to put together an expert white paper on all the changes to a QMS and the impact of that with respect to the new EU MDR. So that's something that will be coming out later this year, but I wanted to let you know that it's important that when you talk with Greenlight.Guru, that know that we are experts. We are on top of this. We have our fingers on the pulse of all the shift that's happening in this industry, so much so that we are going to stay ahead of that and make sure that your quality management system needs are always state of the art, that they're always above what you would expect from a regulatory perspective, and keeping you on track with that compliance, because again, non-compliance is the single biggest risk that a medical device company is faced with today. So as we get into the presentation today, I'm going to go through this smart, bulletproof medical device quality management system. We're going to go through each of these. Each represents a different phase of the smart QMS system. And so I'm going to be teaching you about that smart system and the various elements that are involved in each of the phases. And it doesn't matter, you know, how big your device company is. It doesn't matter how new or how old your medical device company is. This system is just a methodology. It's something that I've been using for a long time. It is the foundation and basis of the Greenlight.Guru software platform. So as we get into this today, you'll see how beneficial this is going to be, and we'll talk about, you know, the impact of people, processes, and technology with your quality management system as well. And there's some core basic tenets or reasons why your quality management system is so important to your business. You know, the easy answer is it's the law. And yeah, of course it's the law. It's the law in Europe, it's the law in Canada, it's the law in the U.S. Anywhere where there's a regulatory authority in the world and you're in the med device industry, there's a pretty good chance there's a set of laws that govern and dictate and define what you need to have in place from a quality management system. That's the easy answer. But again, I told you at the beginning, I don't want you to think about a quality management system as just something you have to do because of the regulations. Yes, we can't forget the regulations, but we want to make sure that we build a system that helps us do a better job with our business, and like getting products to market faster. How do we do that? And your quality system should enable getting products to market faster instead of slowing you down. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. Patients. Everything we do is about the patients who receive our products. And it's all about making sure that they're as safe as possible. We want to make sure the products we develop are safe. We want to make sure they're effective, and a good quality management system will have the proper processes, the checks, the balances, the KPIs implemented in a way that ensures patients are safe. Again, kind of back to that audit perspective or FDA inspection perspective. Everything that you do needs to be with respect to patient safety, with respect to your quality management system. And you need to have sufficient records to show that, because there are all kinds of people that are going to audit and inspect you, whether it be FDA or ISO. You know, and think about, you know, God forbid something terrible happens with a product of yours in some way, shape, or form. Do you think it's just going to stop at FDA inspectors and ISO auditors? No. You could have litigation attorneys that are getting involved as well. So having things documented is important. You need to be ready for those situations. And the reason that this is important is if you build the right system with the right processes and the right technology, then it can actually allow you to focus on what it is that your special skill set, your superhuman power. Each of you probably spends more time wasting hours upon hours every single week doing low to no value add activities because of your cumbersome systems, because of your inefficient processes that you have in place. What if you could get some of that time back? What if you could do more engineering or actually do more strategy from a business perspective, or spend more time on regulatory outset and submissions and things that are going to really help you get that product to market faster? And all of this is really about, I don't want you to worry about that compliance concern. I want you to know with certainty that your processes, your procedures are as compliant as they can possibly be, and you're doing your job, and patients are safe, and products are getting to market a little bit faster. All right, so who am I? Joe shared with you at the beginning that we've done quite a few webinars with the medical devices group, and I've talked about things like quality systems and ISO 1345 and FDA and warning letters and risk management and design controls, but I want you to know a little bit about who I am. So I've been in this industry for well over 18 years. I've brought over 40 products to market. I've been a speaker at many events. I love helping people better understand how to navigate regulations, how to navigate quality systems in a way that it can streamline. If you tell me that you're not a fan of quality systems or that you struggle with design controls of risk, I love that opportunity, because then we have an opportunity to help you find a better way and do so in a way that's compliant but streamlined and efficient. I contribute a lot, in the form of content, podcasts, all these sorts of things that we've written guides for design controls, guides for risk, and all these sorts of things, guides for quality management systems. And you can read and review a lot of that information. You can go to greenlight.guru and certainly consume our content there, but you can also go to all these other industry publications as well. I've also been a part in implementing quality management system many, many times. I've sat across from FDA inspectors many times. That's always a fun activity if you've never been through it. Fun may not be the term that you would select, but I've also helped companies implement ISO 1345 from the ground up and sat across many ISO auditors as well. We also have a pretty popular blog at greenlight.guru. You can go to blog.greenlight.guru to learn more. We have the #1 podcast in the medical device industry with the Global Medical Device Podcast, and anywhere you go to consume and listen to podcasts, you will find it there, Global Medical Device Podcast. I also happen to be the founder at greenlight.guru and the VP of Quality and Regulatory. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, some of the devices I've been a part of bringing to market, I've done a lot of catheter devices, emergency devices, surgical devices, home use products, wound therapy, things of that nature. So a little bit about the types of things that I've been involved with. Yeah, simple mechanical devices, electromechanical devices, software as a medical device, all of those types of things I've been involved with. And as I mentioned, you can go a lot of places to read a lot of the content that we put out, and all of our content is there to help you. It's to help you streamline. It's to help you be more efficient. It's to help you get back to doing your job, your role, the reason that you were hired by your medical device company. Some of the guides that you might be interested in: Definitive Guide to Risk Management, Ultimate Guide to Design Controls, 1345 and FDA Quality System Regulations, and a guide on design verification and validation. In fact, if you do a search on 1345 and FDA QSR, you know what? Greenlight.guru, we rank above FDA, we rank above ISO. So, folks, we know what we're doing here, okay? We're all over the world, the Greenlight platform, and I'm going to talk a little bit later on in the presentation about how to use Greenlight.guru software platform to help enable your quality management system in a way that allows you to get products to market faster and help patients sooner. But you should know that we are all over the world. We have customers that are brand new to this industry, from customers that have been doing this for 30 plus years. They span the entire device market. So it's important to know that the Greenlight system is built on a platform that allows you to scale and grow as your company brings more and more products to market from the very beginning to the end of life cycle. One of the things that I have from a goal for today is I want you to learn how to implement and maintain your quality management system so that you always know that you're going to meet the needs from a FDA standpoint, that you're always going to meet the needs from an ISO 13485 standpoint, that you're always going to be in compliance with those applicable regulations. Another goal that I have for you today is I want you to get products to market faster. You know what? I have loved ones and family members and friends who, and myself potentially even at some point in time, I'm going to need, there's a good chance that somebody I know or myself are going to need medical devices and technologies that you all are developing. I mean, I can't even imagine all the things that you're working on, but there are probably some brilliant technologies that you're trying to get to market. I want those to get to market as fast as possible in a way that has patient safety in mind. I want to make sure that your quality management system isn't preventing that from happening. Another goal that I have for today, I want you to be able to implement this smart QMS approach to your quality management system, whether this is the very first time that you're putting a quality management system in place or whether you've done this 1,000 times. I'm confident in this methodology. It's a system. It's an approach that is very methodical and will allow you to streamline your implementation efforts. So here's how this will work. I'm going to run for about an hour. I want you to shut down any distractions. I want you to be ready to take notes. Turn off your Facebook, turn off Skype, minimize your email. I want you to get out a notepad or whatever way that you keep track of information, and I want you to take a few notes, and I hope that you have some great questions for me at the tail end of our presentation today. As we get into this, there's a lot of things that I'm going to dive into. I want you to think about the costs that are involved. We talked about the cost of non-compliance toward the beginning, but I want you to think about as well the other costs that are involved. Imagine that you have, just close your eyes for a moment. Imagine that you have maybe it's already in place, or maybe you've had an experience where the system didn't do what you thought it was going to do. You spent a lot of time doing that low or no value add activities. And I want you to think about how many hours did you waste? How many consultants did you have to hire in? Did you have to hire additional people to your company just to manage all the documents? Think about how expensive this is. And, God forbid, you have an audit or an FDA inspection and something goes wrong, something goes sideways, it doesn't go exactly according to plan. Now you got to spend a lot of time, effort, and energy dealing with that non-conformance and non-compliance. Folks, I know it may seem a little bit unfathomable, but it is very likely that if you have to deal with this, any sort of inefficient system, that through the cost of your labor, the cost of hiring consultants, the cost of lost opportunity for bringing a product to market, non-compliance issues, and so on, it could very easily be in the millions of dollars. Let's talk a little bit about some of the different elements. Just on a project, a single project, your systems that you're using are likely to be costing you hours upon hours upon hours. I mean, just think about an average medical device product development project over the course of 18 months. We did a case study on this. You're going to lose almost 200 hours, and do the math, figure out what you're paying your people. But if you estimate that, you could be losing tens of thousands of dollars per project. And if you have 3 or 4 or 5 projects that are going on at your company, multiply that times every project. And then what about all that time that you hire consultants and have them come in to be an extension of your team? Now, don't mishear me. I was a consultant for 10 years, and I enjoyed the opportunity and experience, and I made a great living. But, if you can be a little bit more efficient, consultants would appreciate that too. Consultants want to add value. What if, I just know from firsthand experience as a consultant, I made a good living, don't mishear me, but there were so many hours that I spent doing little to no add value activities. I shouldn't be the one trying to track down where paperwork is. It should be in a system that's simple, easy to navigate and to find. You should hire me as a consultant because of my big brain. I already told you I brought 40 products to market and implemented quality systems. That's why you should hire me. It shouldn't be to help you figure out your folder tree structure on your server. But I spent so many hours doing those little to no value add activities. Think about your situation. If you've hired consultants, do everything that consultant does, are they adding value? But the answer should be yes, and consultants want that just as much as you. But if you can save some time or some money there, that would be great. This is the biggest thing that I think so many companies, they have no visibility of or aren't even thinking about. I mean, yeah, of course, everybody you talk to, every software platform you talk to is going to make the claim that they're going to get you to market faster. And, it might be so unbelievable. But imagine, and I'll talk, again, I've told you I'm going to talk about Greenlight.Guru and how we give you time back. But imagine if we can give you 100 to 200 hours back per project per year. That's real time savings, folks. If you add that up, that can relate to be 2 to 3 months of real time that you're going to get back. And if you extrapolate, what do you sell your product for in the marketplace, and you can get to market 3 months faster, that's called a lost market opportunity cost. Not only from a dollar standpoint, but what if somebody else gets to market faster than you and they gain that market share that you're so anxious to get? It can be very, very expensive from a lost opportunity cost. And then I already told you about noncompliance, but let's drill down into that a little bit more detail. Did you know that 69% of 510K submissions are rejected the first time? And so much of that is in your control. And it's so much about making sure that your documentation, your information is consistent throughout the entire submission. There are very simple reasons why 510Ks get rejected, and I want you to have your data, your information, especially as it relates to design controls and risk management, and a streamlined, simple to use, easy workflow designed for the medical device industry, and prevent this from being part of the statistic. And then, going back to that overall nonconformance, very expensive. Hopefully you get lucky and you have no 483 observations, or if you do, maybe you only have a few. But dealing with a 483 observation all by itself from an FDA inspection, or dealing with a nonconformance from an ISO audit, it's time consuming, it's expensive. You've got to put other things on hold so that you can deal with the timeline constraints of dealing with those issues. So if you add all of that up, labor costs, consulting costs, lost opportunity costs, and non-compliance issues, it gets to be pretty expensive. So just keep that in mind. Now, I started to talk a little bit about this, and we're going to get into this now, that what does a bulletproof quality management system do? Well, it has to leverage people, it has to leverage processes, and it has to leverage technology. It's got to be the perfect balance of all of these things. And we talked a little bit about those resource constraints and how the people part of that has some impact on your quality management system. But as I start to get into the process side of things, I'm going to share with you my cornerstones. I'm going to share with you the key foundational elements of my particular QMS philosophy. Number one, keep it simple. Folks, I've seen so many examples of a quality management system that is so overly detailed and so bureaucratic in nature. It is ridiculous, and we need to get back to basics. And you may be one of these companies that has a quality management system that you don't know where to begin. And if you're participating in this webinar because you're trying to get some answers, my first advice to you is that let's get back to basics. Let's get back to the simplest quality management system that we can possibly have and still maintain compliance and still make sure that everybody in our companies knows when and what to do. The other foundation is right-sizing your quality management system. So imagine you're at the other end of that spectrum and you're a startup and you're just getting started. The quality system that you have in place at your company is probably going to be a little bit different than than the large med device company that's been in business for 35 years with 322 products on the market. So keep that in mind. It needs to be right size for you. And I want to pause for a moment. I mean, I know sometimes startups, you're very anxious to have that person that used to work at one of these large medical device companies come in to your company to help you with your quality management system. Keep in mind when you do that they might have an experience around big quality management system implementations, and putting that big quality management system in place at your company may be overly burdensome. It may be stifling. It may not be right size. I can tell you about one of my first consulting experiences back a little over 10 years ago. I was working with such a startup, and I was engaged to help button up some quality management system details. And as I first started getting up to speed, I read through the quality management system, and I'm like, this is beautiful. I could see, it's a little complicated, but I can see how all of these processes are established. It looks like somebody spent a lot of time on this. And then I spent some time on site at the company, and I started doing like gap analysis or kind of mini inspections or mock audits and that sort of thing. And I found that the people on the ground, the people who were to be following this quality management system, they weren't following it. They had no knowledge of what was defined in those procedures, and that's a problem. If you have a quality management system that aligns with regulations, but people aren't following it, that's a problem. That's also going to lead to non-compliances during FDA inspections and ISO audits. So you have to have processes that are right size that are being followed. And I know it sounds so simple. And for those of you that have been in this industry for a while, I'm sure you can share your stories as well. And if you'd like to share those, please type those in the question comment. And I'd love to hear some of your anecdotes. And ideally we'll get to some of those later today as well. So again, keep your quality management system simple. I'm going to say this, and I mean this wholeheartedly. Your quality system should address compliance, and it should address how you do business. And these need to be in sync with one another, but it should be simplified. If you have a step in your process that doesn't add value and doesn't lend to supporting compliance or isn't about promoting patient safety, then you might want to think about taking that step out of the process. It may not be necessary. And again, right size your QMS. You need to build it for the company that you are and the company that you plan to be soon. I know, some of us have been kind of forced, so to speak, to reevaluate and reassess and update our QMS because of recent changes to 13485. And I think this is if that's you, then that's great, because what I'm going to go through on the SMART 5-phase QMS is going to be very helpful for you as you kind of revamp your quality management system. It's also going to be helpful if you're just getting started with your QMS, because this is going to lay the foundation for a methodical approach to doing so. And even if you're a company that has a quality system and you're pretty happy with it and you don't think there are any problems, you know what? You might find a tidbit or two from what I'm going to share with the SMART 5-phase QMS system today that might help you as you go through things like internal audits and just that business as usual opportunities for improvement. If you have a true quality mindset, you will never be satisfied with your quality management system. You will always be looking for opportunities for improvement. And you know what? You might find something today from what I'm about to share with you. So a best practice QMS implementation achieves two primary missions. You align with the must-have, must-needed to address regulations, and it describes your practices, your processes in your company. And I talked about the process sort of things, or the people side of things. We're going to talk about process side of things. We're going to get into that 5-step SMART QMS system, and I'll talk toward the tail end about the technology side. So here it is, folks, SMART, S-M-A-R-T. And I'm going to jump into the S, or the scope phase of this as well. And I'm going to hit every one of these, and we're going to talk about some of the key points, some myths, and what you can do about it, some best practices. So let's dive into the scope. This is really about quality planning. And like I said, if you've already got a quality system in place, then you can still put a quality plan to go through an overview of your entire quality management system, to do some sort of gap analysis and that sort of thing. if you're just getting started, it's good to lay out a roadmap, so to speak, a timeline of how you need to address the different parts and pieces of a quality management system. And this is really key. You know, you have to know what regulations apply to your device. You have to know what markets you're in, because there may be some nuances. For example, with Health Canada regulations that you need to address from a QMS standpoint, that if you weren't in Canada, you might not even need to worry about that. So you need to know where you're going to be. It's also important to understand your product classification, because depending on the classification of your product in various markets may dictate and determine how and what you need to document. Like, for example, from a design control standpoint, it may dictate what you need to have in place as far as identification and traceability once you go to market, and that sort of thing. So it's just very important to keep that in mind and as you go through that process. So yes, there is a direct relationship between product classification and your quality management system. The other key thing that frankly I love about 13485 2016 is this concept of risk-based approaches to your quality management system. Many of us have been probably dealing with, you know, especially on the product development side, risk management, specifically ISO 14971 risk management. And, you know, if you want to go check out the webinar that I did in the past from the medical devices group about a couple years ago, we did an excellent webinar on ISO 14971. You can go check that out and view that. And if you have any questions or comments about that, I'd love to chat with you about that. Risk is one of those topics that I love. But risk-based QMS is important because now it really puts the onus on us to run a good business. It puts the onus on us to make sure that our processes are in fact connected to risk. As I mentioned earlier, patient safety, big thing that we're trying to do from a device standpoint. Well, there's a risk component to that. So shouldn't our quality management systems and the processes that we follow and the records that we generate also connect to that? And I think that's one of the really great things about 1345. So much so that they've leveraged ISO 14971 as the process to follow from a risk management standpoint. And folks, Greenlight.Guru, we're ahead of the curve. We've built workflows in our product that are in alignment with 14971. And you know, that's part of being a med device specific EQMS solution. So something to keep in mind as you're out there on your journey to trying to find better technology. You know, it's no coincidence either that FDA and frankly other regulatory bodies throughout the world are also putting a much greater emphasis on 14971 and making sure your QMS and your design controls and your risk management for your products are all meeting that particular standard. So there's a myth, there's a few myths frankly about this planning. When you get into planning, you need to understand what's involved, but there's a myth that a startup medical device company doesn't need to worry about a quality management system until they get clearance. I mean, I've been called before from a startup that they called me one day and they said, hey, we got 510K clearance for our device and we don't know what a quality system is and we don't know what design controls are and we don't know what risk management is. Don't be that company, folks. The quality management system standards and regulations are all defined. You can get a copy of 1345 for a couple $100. These are not super secretive things. You should be ahead of the curve. Yes, you are a medical device company. You need to act like one. You need to make sure that your processes and procedures grow and scale and are right size for the company that you are. And by the time you're going through the design and development, there are a few things that you need to focus on, things like design controls, risk, document management, supplier controls, those sorts of things. But as you get to market, you need to make sure you have the rest of that in place. But so think of a QMS as an escalation, especially if you're that startup medical device company. Another myth, once you have an established quality management system, that you don't need to go back and change it, especially if you've had good ISO audits and FDA inspections. Folks, let's be real here. I mean, come on. We're all, if you've thought about quality in any way, shape, or form, especially as more of a business opportunity rather than a checkbox, you're of the mindset where there's continuous process improvement, continuous opportunity for improvement. You can always improve your process to get a little bit more efficient, get a little bit better, and that's the mindset that you need to take when it comes to your QMS. And that's why this SMART methodology is so important, because it takes you through the scoping and the planning efforts and then we're going to get into the other steps as well. But this does apply to you even if you think that your quality management system is bulletproof. I can assure you, invite me in for a day and I'll be able to poke 22 holes in your quality management system and point out all the issues that you have. I mean, do you want me to find them? Do you want FDA to find them? It's your choice. So some best practices. Gap analysis, such a powerful tool, especially if you've got that quality management system in place already and you're wondering, especially as it relates to 1345-2016, what do you need to change? Good news is we have a pretty simple checklist. If you want that, send us a note. We'll get that out to you. That's a high-level thing. It really helps you identify the areas that you need to focus on with your QMS. So do perform a gap analysis, especially as you may enter new markets. You've got to know what you need to deal with, and hopefully you're in good shape. But the other key thing is audits should be your friend, so to speak, especially your internal audits. And this is an area where so many companies are missing the mark. So many companies do the internal auditing, but they get no value out of it. And come on, man, you're spending so much time doing these internal audits. Shouldn't you get some value out of it? And I think as engineer back in the day, that's what led me to this SMART methodology, and that's what led me to start Greenlight.Guru and the platform that we built. Is I got tired of doing things that I had questions about. I got tired of doing things that didn't add value to what we were doing. And there's a story that I could share. I got lots of stories. I'll share a few throughout the rest of today's presentation. But on internal auditing, I once worked with a company that saved all their internal audits until the month of December, and then they outsourced it, and then that person never even came in, and they just did a remote desk audit, and that's all they ever did. And it was just a checkbox, and it was crazy. I mean, they got no value out of it. All they were doing was satisfying to say that, yeah, we did internal audits, here's the evidence of that, but they didn't learn anything from that. Your internal audits should be one of the single reasons or best ways for you to learn about where your processes are breaking down, where the inefficiencies are. Your internal audit should be harder than any FDA inspection and ISO audit that you've ever had. And if your internal audits are not, and you're not getting value out of it, you need to call us, and we'll get you connected to people that can get you on the right track. You need to look at ways to improve and overhaul your quality management system if that's not the case. All of these things that you're going to do about your quality management system, whether it's the first time or whether you're doing some updates to your existing quality management system, document your plan in a quality plan. And it doesn't have to be complicated, folks. It's like a project plan. It's like a risk management plan. Describe what it is that you're trying to do and who's involved and what the desired outcome of that is. Keep it simple. So now that we covered scope, I'm going to move to the M, or the make. And if you're getting started for the first time, as I mentioned, the make, these are the procedures that you're going to need, the part of the QMS that you're going to need during the product development process. But if you're going through this and doing this SMART methodology, this is a methodology, an approach that you can use to help structure internal audit programs and gap analyses in a way that's kind of guiding you through this in a very systematic fashion. So the make phase, these are the QMS procedures that pertain and relate and impact product development. And so this is making sure that you're designing things properly, that you've assessed risk and those sorts of things. And key things, this is about making sure you've got your quality management system right-sized at all times. So if you're in design and development, you need to have procedures for design controls or design and development. You need to have procedures for risk management. You need to have procedures for supplier management, and you need to have procedures for document control. Why? Because everything that you're doing during the product development process does result in documentation and records. You're going to need a design history file. You're going to need design and development files. You're going to be putting together 510K submissions and technical files and PMAs and all sorts of different regulatory submissions. Well, that information needs to be documented in a way that's defined, and you need procedures for that. So there are a couple of myths about this particular make phase. One is that if you are a contract manufacturer, then you probably don't need to worry about product development related QMS procedures. They probably don't apply to you. And I'm going to say that that's a myth, because if you are a contract manufacturer, granted, you may not be doing design and development work, but there's a lot of contract manufacturers I'm aware of that they advertise themselves as contract manufacturers, but yet they're doing design and development work. Folks, certainly if that describes you as a contract manufacturer, you absolutely must have design control practices defined, risk management practices defined, because you're doing design work. And if you are that contract manufacturer that is truly a specification builder, meaning you're getting specifications from others to truly manufacture devices, you need to understand what that information is. You need to understand what design controls are and risk management are, and have an appreciation for that product that you're manufacturing. Why? Because there are things that you're doing during the manufacturing process that may have some impact on the risk and safety of that device. You may make some decision from a manufacturing standpoint that could have a negative adverse impact on that product and patient safety. And you need to understand the basic premises of design controls and design and development. You need to make sure that especially if you're making changes, because you know what, contract manufacturers, it's just the nature of the business. You're going to make a change from a manufacturing process. You may have to change a component for reasons that are absolutely explainable. You may communicate those changes, but you need to understand this. You need to understand there is an impact from a design perspective on that change that you're making. And so you better have a handle on design controls. The other myth is that if you have an established medical device company with an established QMS with a good track record, that you don't need to worry about spending any time, effort, and energy on design and development. I'm going to say that's not true. And it's not true for some few very obvious reasons that maybe you're not aware of. Reason number one, it may be surprising to you, but as a single clause, 82030 design controls gets more FDA 43 observations than any single clause of 21 CFR Part 820 quality system regulations. Here's the data from 2015. The data is consistent year after year after year. Check it out for yourself. But you can see that a large percentage of FDA 43 observations deal with design controls. So you know what? This is clear to me that we as an industry still struggle with design controls. So even if you have a pretty good track record and you have an established QMS, you probably could benefit from learning a little bit more best practices involved with design and development. Especially, as I mentioned earlier, risk management emphasis is on the rise from EU, from FDA, from 1345. And I guess a question for you to think about on that. Have you figured out how to integrate your risk management process and design controls? Let me guess, you got two separate spreadsheets and you try to hyperlink. That's not going to work long term. Folks, we've got to figure out a green light. We built those workflows specifically around that specific purpose. So we got you covered. And that leads me to reason number two, 14971. I mean, I cannot emphasize this enough. We all need to comply with the standard, and your standard FMEA only approach is not going to cut the mustard when it comes to demonstrating compliance to 14971. You need a more holistic point of view. You need to understand how 14971 needs to be applied in a way that makes more sense, that is in the language and the words and the phrases and the context that regulators understand. And you need a simple, streamlined workflow, which, again, we've got you covered, folks. This is why we established Greenlight.Guru, is to make things easier. Our design control workflow, our risk management workflow is making life easier. Startup companies who have never been through this process ever before are giving us feedback, and they're saying, wow, product development is easy. Wow, design controls are easy. Wow, it's really clear and obvious what I needed to do when I needed to do it. And it's all because we built those workflows that are purpose-driven and specific to their needs as medical device product developers. The other reason that I want you to focus on is, as I just have hinted at, design controls and risk. They're really the same process with two slightly different perspectives, but you need to show how the two processes, the risk and design, are completely fully integrated, how one flows to the other and then leads back to changes and controls and mitigations and reductions. You need to have this built in place. And a standard QMS process, a traditional paper-based approach, a lot of the other tools and options that you may have available, it's just not going to work. It's not going to scale. It's why we built Greenlight.Guru, and I'll talk about that technology piece here in a few moments. So some of the best practices that I want you to get into your head: streamline that product development process, make it as smooth as possible, make it as clear as possible, make it as simple as possible. Traceability is so important, and I didn't really emphasize that too much in the design control side of things, but showing how your flow from user needs to inputs to outputs to verification and validation, design reviews, and all those different design control steps linked together is so crucial and so important, and you need to have a simple, easy way to do that. And you have to be able to show and demonstrate and have processes that integrate design controls and risk. And don't do it because I'm telling you it's what the regulations or the regulatory bodies are expecting. Do it because it makes good business sense. Why does it make good business sense? If you're making design decisions that aren't risk-based, then you're probably missing the mark. Everything that you do from a design and development standpoint needs to be tied to risk, and you need to be able to show the impact to patient and end user with respect to a systematic, easy-to-follow workflow. So we've covered scope, we covered make. Let's move on to the A. And the A are relates to the quality management system procedures that you need to have in place as you start to move to manufacturing. So this is making sure that you're going to be building pilot production. You may be building some late-stage prototypes. Regardless, as you move through development, you're going to be making sure that the production and manufacturing related processes and specifications and drawings are where they need to be for your device. And this can be all the way from that point to where you're ready to submit. Again, I want you to think about this as, even if you're that established medical device company and you're doing that gap analysis, the SMART approach can be very helpful with you doing that gap analysis. You may focus the first bit of effort scoping and developing that quality plan, and then you move to the make stage of the SMART 5-phase QMS where you're focusing on design and development related processes, and now you're going to start to move into kind of a different chunk or group of processes in your QMS. And for those of you that are doing this for the first time, at the time where you're starting to build pilot production units, you're starting to build verification and validation units, you need to start to build onto your quality management system as well. This is all about being right size. This is all about building as you go from a QMS standpoint. And some of the procedures that you need to start to focus on in this stage, you need to focus on things like device master records. You need to make sure you have production and process controls in place, labeling, packaging, all those things that are going to touch or impact your product and your ability to build. These are the types of things that start to get involved. Training, purchasing, big important things. You need to make sure that operators are properly trained. And even if you're outsourcing to contract manufacturers, you still need to be able to make sure that these things are addressed. Maybe your contract manufacturer is going to establish a lot of the processes here. That's fine. You got to know this. You got to make sure that those processes are good. You got to make sure those processes meet FDA regulations, because at the end of the day, and ISO expectations and EU, because at the end of the day, it is your responsibility. Your name is on the product, and if something is non-compliant or falls short, it's ultimately going to be up to you to deal with. So you better make sure that those resources you're working with are in alignment. Another myth: your regulatory submission has to include details of your manufacturing processes. Now, we'll say there's some partial truth to that, because as you get into, if you're a class 3 and you're going to go PMA path in the U.S., then manufacturing processes could be a very big part of that particular regulatory submission. And there are elements of a CE mark technical file that do include some of manufacturing processes. But if you're going the 510K path in the U.S., you'll have to spend very little. You will provide very little with respect to manufacturing of your devices as part of that submission. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it, because like FDA is a great example. Is they're going to expect that you're following the regulations at every step along the way, and they don't always look for that objective evidence ahead of time. They may reserve that until after you go to market, and then they come and do your inspection, and then they can hammer you if you weren't documenting this. So just because it's not always explicitly required as part of a regulatory submission doesn't mean you should ignore it and hold off till later. Another myth that happens in this particular phase, or the approved phase, is that you have to wait until you receive regulatory clearance before you can begin manufacturing. It's a myth. In fact, if you understand the premise behind things like design validation very clearly states that any units that are used for design validation purposes need to be production equivalent. Folks, that means they need to be, simply put, manufactured according to manufacturing level specifications and drawings. They need to be manufactured by manufacturing personnel. So you actually are expected to transition from development to production and manufacturing while you're going through this process. You don't have to wait to the clearance. So some best practices. This is always kind of like the ultimate. The day that you get the permission to do so from a regulatory body to sell your medical device, you would love to be able to pull that trigger, snap a finger, and make it so as quickly as possible. Now, usually there is some time between when we get the clearance versus when we're ready to scale up manufacturing. And there's risk to this, don't mishear me, but there are some things that you can do while you're waiting on that regulatory clearance to make sure that time is minimized as much as possible. So, work on that. There are some risks. But one of the big things that you can do from mitigating that risk is to implement this SMART QMS methodology, because it's very methodical at making sure that you have the right processes and procedures in place from your QMS to address your specific needs, so that the moment that you get that clearance letter, you've got all of your QMS elements in place, you've got specific manufacturing related processes in place, and you can get to market as quickly as possible. That's the whole idea, folks, is to try to reduce the time that you're losing in this process and get to market just a little bit faster. Patients need your products. So another thing that from a regulatory perspective that's important is making sure that you leverage tools and checklists that are available to you in the industry. And one of the key things about that is, like I mentioned, the 510K could have, there's 69% of 510Ks get rejected. Well, there's a thing called a refuse to accept checklist that's available from FDA. You should use that as you're preparing those types of submissions. So we've covered scope, we've covered make, we've covered approve. Let's move on to the next phase of the SMART QMS approach. And this is the release phase. So this is the QMS that you need to go to market. And this is making sure that you've got everything dialed in and ready to go. And this is where we're going to really start to close the loop and finalize the remaining parts and pieces of that quality management system. So if you remember, in the approved phase, we were building processes that related to production and process control. Well, now we're going to start to close that loop and put the final finishing pieces on this. So process validation, software validation, making sure we've got all of these calibration pieces in place. And, I want to give you a caveat. Some of these processes may shift from one phase to the next, depending on what your specific needs are, your specific products are. So just keep that in mind. But basically, we got to have the provisions in place to deal with feedback, complaints, adverse events, servicing, all these things that we need to deal with once we go to market. So a couple of myths. A design history file, the ultimate contents of design controls, is completed and transferred to manufacturing. Once you do that, then you don't need to keep that up to date. Folks, I believe that is a myth. We're in the world today where there's an expectation that you keep design control information living. I think we could all consider the days are gone, certainly numbered, where we complete design controls and we complete our design history file, and then we archive that DHF in some file cabinet down in the archive basement room of building 48B. No, those days are gone. We need to keep our design controls living. Why? Because there will be changes to your product once you're manufacturing. You may need to make a change because of feedback. You may need to make a change because you had a complaint. You might just make a change because of business reasons. But regardless, you will make changes. And every change that you make, you need to assess the impact of design controls. And this is why traceability is so important, and this is where so many companies are going to miss the mark. You could have amazing strategic competitive advantage if you embrace these basic concepts of design controls, keeping it living, and traceability. Because when you make a change, guess what? If you have traceability under control in a simple, easy-to-use format, then you'll know what tests to do. You'll know what other changes need to be made. You'll understand that integration point from a risk standpoint and what the impact of that is. So please do yourself a favor and embrace the concept of living design controls, living traceability matrices, living risk management. So best practices, I just hit that point. Your design history file, your design controls should be alive and well throughout your entire product lifecycle. You have to also make sure that that risk management information is also a lifecycle process. So we're cruising right along. We're finishing up the 5th phase of the SMART approach, and that 5th phase is the track phase, because guess what? Now we spent all this time, effort, and energy putting all of these processes and procedures in place. We want to have mechanisms that we can also make sure that we're tracking, that we're constantly getting the maximum efficiency that we possibly can from our QMS. And this is really what this phase is all about. So think about things like CAPA, think about things like analysis of data, think about things like internal auditing. Those are all processes that we should define that help us monitor the health and the effectiveness of all the things that we're doing. Also, some other key things that are also indicators of the health and the performance of our QMS are things like non-conformances, complaints, adverse events. These are all indicators that something is happening, good or bad, with our devices. So let's cover a couple myths. Once a product is launched and you've implemented that quality system, you no longer have to worry about your QMS. You've set it and now you can forget it. Well, that's just a fallacy. That's just a myth. It is expected that you, and I talked about this a moment ago about internal auditing and how important internal audits are to your overall health of your QMS. And the expectation is that you're constantly evaluating and monitoring and constantly, frankly, right-sizing your quality management system to fit and align with the organization that you are. So this is a perpetual thing, and you should implement a solid approach to do so it's not a crazy time-consuming effort every time that it happens. You know, implement this methodology, just make it part of your routine, part of your approach year after year after year, and your patients will thank you for it. So some best practices, you know, always be in that mindset that there's ways to tweak and modify. And now you can go overboard with this. You can make a change to procedures every single day. And when you do that, you've missed the essence of this approach that I'm trying to describe to you. You know, there should be a cycle to this. You know, every so often you need to come back and revisit these key processes and go through it in a methodical way. So you always want your quality management system to be right size. If you suddenly increase the number of employees at your organization, that might be a trigger for you to think about making some adjustments to your quality management system. If you decide, hey, now we're going to start outsourcing these things, those might be triggers. But the point is, keep your business practices, the growth and the contraction and expansion of your business in mind when you're evaluating your QMS. And there are trigger events in your business, in your world, that may be time to go and right-size your QMS. KPIs, key performance indicators, you know, people go crazy and overboard with these sometimes. Sometimes they have dozens and dozens and dozens. It can get a little bit egregious, frankly, the use of KPIs. I want you to challenge you to find the handful of KPIs that are the most meaningful for your business, that are going to give you the best indicator of QMS performance and effectiveness. And find those and implement those and use those as indicators of the health of your QMS and the health of your business. Because frankly, folks, if you have a healthy QMS, you should have a healthy business, and vice versa. So let's recap. We talked about scope. We talked about make. We talked about approve. We talked about release, and we talked about track. This is my 5-phase approach to a bulletproof medical device quality management system. We talked about the people. We talked about the processes. Let me spend a couple moments talking to you about the technology side of things. I talked about how important traceability is. It is so crucial that you show how all of your things are linked, connected, and traced to one another. again, remember this. This is, I'm sure we've all heard this. If not, etch this into your memory. If it wasn't documented, it didn't happen. Traceability is a key thing, and so many people have reported how much time and effort and energy this takes. You can look at all the time we spend on documents and records and all these sorts of things. Traceability and documentation, yeah, they can be, if you design poor processes, they can be extremely time consuming. And that's why Greenlight.Guru, frankly, why we rolled out this product several years ago, because I want you to get back to being an engineer. I want you to get back to being a quality professional. I want you to get back to manufacturing. Whatever your special skill set, your superpower is, I want you to do that. I don't want you to waste time pushing paper. I mean, come on. I want you to make sure that you're doing the right things at the right time. And that's why, I was the founder of Greenlight, and that's why we built the Greenlight software platform around this smart 5-phase QMS implementation system. So what's the secret? A lot of people think, oh, well, paper is cheap and it's easy. And that's a myth. That's the biggest myth alive in our industry today. And the crazy thing about it is, over half the medical device industry is still on paper, but it is the most expensive way you could possibly even think of putting a quality system in place and managing documents and records. I mean, if you have a paper-based quality management system and you've been doing this for a couple years, you probably already know. That might be why you're here on this webinar today. I can assure you that records are going to get lost. You're going to have missing signatures. You're going to have all sorts of problems. It is an auditor will love to come into your facility if you have a paper-based system. Why? Because it's pretty easy to find non-conformances. I want you to be a market leader in this space. I don't want you to have hacked together systems that you've kind of built as you went. I want you to think about this with strategy and with intention in mind. And I already talked to you earlier about how expensive all of this can be from a cost, from a dollars and cents standpoint. I want you to realize that this is easily hundreds of thousands, can very easily be millions of dollars over the course of the life of your medical device company. It's very, very, very expensive. So why not do it right? Why not spend a fraction of that and do it the right way? That's where Greenlight.Guru comes in. We've got customers all over the world. The most progressive, most exciting, most innovative companies are getting it. They're coming to us and they realize, wow, there's a better way. We've been there, done that the old way. We've done paper. We've done these legacy tools. We've done these low-powered software solutions. They're not working. Greenlight has been their answer. And so I've just shared with you all of the ways that implementing a smart QMS system will work. I talked about the importance of people. I talked about the importance of process. I've talked to you about the importance of technology. And if you want to get products to market faster and minimize your risk from patient safety perspective, but also from a non-compliance perspective, then it's probably something that you need to think about with a little bit more fervor and a little bit more activity. This is why we're here. And knowing that you can implement this system no matter whether you're a startup or whether you're a multinational with 38 sites all over the globe, the Greenlight platform scales. It is designed with always keeping you compliant and designed to be right-sized and work with you as you grow. So let's take a little bit into the details of Greenlight.Guru and how we stack up with paper. So one of the things you should know, and I'm just going to get to all of these right away, paper-based systems, if you've never been through an audit or inspection and you have a paper-based system, get prepared now. You're going to have missing documents. You're going to have documents that are the wrong revision, that are at point of use. You're going to have people in manufacturing that are using Rev 3, but yet the drawing is on Rev 12. It happens because paper doesn't work. The other thing you're going to have documents that are going to require signatures, and somehow or another they got published, they got put in place, and there's missing signatures. It's happened to me. This is why I know it's happened. It doesn't matter how good you think you are with your paper-based approach. These mistakes they're inevitable. And auditors, they have this secret power to be able to find that. They always find those records. I don't know how they do it, but they always know. On the contrary, from a Greenlight perspective, you're going to know that the Greenlight platform is constantly up to date and current with the medical device regulations that matter to you. That is my single biggest job at Greenlight.guru, is to keep my finger on that pulse and make sure that our platform always aligns. We've always focused on risk. How important risk is to this world is especially in the medical device industry, it's going to increase. It's not going to be on the decline. So we built workflows with that in mind. We know that time to market is important, and so the processes from a design and development, from a design control standpoint, should not get into your way. They should actually enhance and improve your time to market. We also want to make sure that all the stakeholders in your business have real-time, current, up-to-date access to data and information to make informed decisions, especially as it relates to quality of your devices, and that's what we built. And it's all got to be in a single source of truth. So that's the advantage at Greenlight. So top 10 ways to save time, effort, energy, money, frankly, when it comes down to it, with Greenlight versus paper. These are some of the reasons. Being organized, being streamlined, getting more things done in a smoother, more efficient fashion. That's what we're all about. So just to give you some glimpse, document control, it's a cloud-based application with streamlined workflows, the user interface and the user experience. We have customers reporting to us all the time how much they actually love using Greenlight.guru. If they know what to do, they know what button to click on and where to go and what happens next. And it's all because it's purpose-driven. It's built for you, the medical device professional. And if you're going to be in that paper system, you're going to have a hard time with traceability. Spreadsheets don't scale. And for those of you that have ever tried to do traceability in a spreadsheet, you know how many hundreds of hours you're spending each and every project dealing with that. It's just a nightmare. How are you going to communicate information, collaborate amongst teams? I mean, especially most companies these days seem to have some virtual elements. It's not as common these days for every single resource that you're going to work with to be completely vertically integrated within your organization. You're going to be working with people all over the globe, frankly, and you need a system that everyone on your team can access in real time, and the information is it's a source of truth, and that it's up to date and current. Some of the other issues, we talked about being, risk management, how important that is. And again, a lot of spreadsheet approaches, but it's hard to keep all of this information up to date and current with traditional approaches, and that's why the Greenlight.guru approach is so key to this process. So knowing a little bit more about design controls and risk in Greenlight.guru, it's important to know a little bit about those workflows. Again, you're not going to find any other software platform that has been designed with the medical device professional in mind, especially as it comes to design controls and risk, because we actually use the terminology and the workflows that are expected, that are demanded from FDA and from ISO. So the low-powered solutions, the paper systems, the Battleship Enterprise solutions, they're complicated. They weren't designed for med device industry. They're very time-consuming to implement. I talked to a guy the other day that bought one of these solutions, and it took him, he bought it like 9 months ago, and they still haven't implemented. Come on, folks, you work hard for your money. Your companies work hard for the money. If you're going to spend money on a solution, you should be able to use it as quickly as possible, and that's why we built this, because we know how important it is to get on the right track. We get you up and running in days and weeks, and where other solutions in this space, they take months and sometimes years, and then they require so much configuration and customization that it becomes a validation nightmare, it becomes a maintenance nightmare. And they're not built for the medical device industry. That's the secret they don't want you to know, is that they're not designed for med device in mind. And the other thing is, you want to work with a company that's a true partner. I already told you my job is to keep my finger on the pulse. I've been in the medical device industry for nearly 20 years. Folks, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. And everybody at the Greenlight.guru company has that same methodology. In fact, if you want to understand the mission at Greenlight.guru, is probably similar to yours, and that is to improve the quality of life. And I want to help improve your quality of life as a medical device professional, to give you a solution that's much simpler and aligns with your knowledge and understanding and compliance in mind. So keeping that front and center, organizing information by projects, integrating design and risk, very important. So when you combine all of this together in consideration with FDA 820, Part 11, you know what, folks? That's the biggest craziness that's out in the marketplace. These legacy solutions, they don't know anything about Part 11, but they're out there telling you that, oh, yeah, you're compliant. You know what? Talk to an expert. Come talk to us, and we'll get you on the right path, because Part 11 is a big exposure for medical device companies, especially if you're using any sort of legacy systems. And guess what? If you think, oh, I'm on paper and Part 11 doesn't apply to me, but you're doing any sort of scanning of documentation and putting documents on servers, you have Part 11 exposure, and you probably didn't even realize it. So come talk to us. We're also focused on 1345, 14971. We've got workflows that are designed for the medical device industry. The user interface is fun. It's easy. It's usable. You know when and what to do. And the implementation and training, frankly, like I said, it's days and weeks. We also have med device experts on our team. Yeah, people like me who have been in this industry for many, many, many years. They are going to be the person that teaches you how to use the software. They're going to be the person that's there on the other end of a call to answer your technical questions and help provide guidance and direction as needed. And that's all about making sure that we want to keep you on the right path. So as I'm wrapping up today, I want to share with you a couple testimonials from some of our customers. You can see, again, some of the most innovative companies in the world are using these products, the Greenlight.Group product. You know, I love what Gabriel Sanchez says here. Can't even imagine getting through an audit. And they knew right away when they saw Greenlight.Group that this was a solution that they had been looking for, because it simplified their gap in knowledge. You know, they leveraged a purpose-built solution for the medical device industry. They leveraged the Greenlight.Group medical device expertise, and it just made them focus, allowed them to, frankly, focus on product development. And you know what? I want Gabriel Sanchez and Kate Montgomery, I want them focusing on the engineering aspects, because they're out to do some amazing things that are going to most definitely impact the quality of human life in a very big way, and I want them to do that as quickly as possible. What about Photonicare and Ryan Shelton? I mean, again, these guys are doing some fantastic things. I mean, just read this for yourself. Simplifying quality management. I mean, wouldn't you have liked to have known about Greenlight.Group when you started your QMS efforts? Folks, it's not too late. You can reach out to us and learn more. Here's a guy, I mean, I enjoy talking to Mike Fisher at GCMI, Global Center for Medical Innovation. Mike's been doing this longer than I have, or just about as long as I have anyway, and he's worked for big companies, and he's seen quality management systems implemented in many, many ways, and he understands the simplicity, the purpose behind the Greenlight solution. So much so that GCMI, they're an accelerator in the Atlanta area, they're mandating that every one of their companies put Greenlight.Guru in place, because they know it's all about compliance and it's all about getting to market. And they've seen how the Greenlight system will make that happen. So I've shown you that if you're willing to put in a little bit of work and leverage the proven Greenlight.Guru approach and system, that you too can also have a bulletproof quality management system that's going to save you up to millions of dollars, and it's going to give you peace of mind. And you've seen that it's possible to implement this system whether you are brand new and you have no quality system in place, or whether you have something that's already been there and you're trying to figure out efficiency gains. It doesn't matter. So if you're ready to talk about implementing this strategy while leveraging the best technology at your company, here's what to do next. Go to this website, www.greenlight.guru/webinar-demo. And you'll be able to schedule your free quality management orientation session with one of our specialists. They're going to listen to your needs and get you connected with the right resource. And that will be great, because you know you'll get to see firsthand how simple and easy Greenlight.Guru system can be to use. You'll be able to pick a time for a one-on-one demo. It's personalized, it's custom, you know, and it's about you. We talk to you, we understand your needs. You're going to talk to somebody with medical device expertise, somebody that understands your challenges, not a system that they know enough about 1345 and FDA 820 to be dangerous. You know, who do you want? Somebody that's read the regulations or somebody that's lived them just like you? If it were me, I would want somebody that's been doing this for 20 years. You can also schedule the time, or we're going to call you, I'm sorry, whenever you go to that website, we're going to call you and we're going to schedule that time. So again, remember your QMS, your bulletproof QMS, you need to leverage the best people, the best processes, the best technology. And, you know, you've got number one covered because you're building a great team, and we can help you with items number 2 and number 3. Again, go to greenlight.guru/webinar-demo to schedule your free one-on-one call. So, any questions?
Yes, and that was some presentation, John. Thank you. My first question is, are you hiring?
You know, we are hiring, Joe, and thank you for that question. And your next follow-up question may be, who are we hiring for? So all parts of the business, frankly, are hiring, from marketing to our customer success team to our sales team to our software development team. Every single element of our business is growing right now. So, you know, if you're a front-end developer that has some Ember.js experience, that's great. If you have back-end experience in JavaScript, that's great. If you're into content generation from a marketing standpoint, you know, there's a lot of areas where we're growing right now, because I'm sure you can imagine how popular our approach has been to simplifying QMS.
Well, you're really onto something. And Jim writes, John, well done. I've used SMART for goal setting, and your approach is in alignment with mine. Your SMART system helps solidify the approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
And as you were sharing the Greenlight Guru demo page, Vesna was asking, how do I get access to the demo? So thank you for that. Tom asks, how is the system partitioned in order to minimize regulatory audit exposure?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. So a couple of things. I mean, I always tell people when it comes to like FDA inspections versus ISO audits, you dance a little bit differently. And I can tell you from an ISO audit perspective, it's been fantastic. We've had customers that have gave us feedback that said, hey, wow, using Greenlight.guru during my ISO audit streamlined that process a great deal. And the reason is you can put in filters, and you can easily search for that information in the Greenlight platform and retrieve the information that's being requested. And that's the beautiful thing about being a single source of truth. Now, I'm going to tell you that the FDA, you're going to dance a little bit differently, but you're still going to use Greenlight.guru to be able to easily organize and retrieve information that's being asked for, and then you can present that to the FDA inspector as that evidence. So just the ease of use and having all of your data and information and systems and documentation and procedures and reports and so on and so on and so on, all in a single source of truth. That's the beautiful thing about Greenlight.guru, making life easier during audits and inspections.
Nick asks, Greenlight Guru seems to work really for small and startup companies. Does the system scale?
Nick, that's a great question, and I'm so glad you asked that. Yes, it absolutely scales. And that's the wonderful thing about this is our team, you know, you mentioned the growth, Joe, but our team is growing, and a big part of that growth is we're constantly learning new ideas and feature requests from our customer base. And, you know, we've got a big part of our business is software development, and we're listening. We've got our finger on the pulse of our customers, and our customers are demanding and requesting certain features and attributes. And as such, we're able to respond and add additional feature sets and workflows and that sort of thing. And, you know, we're on the edge of rolling out a significant, massive set of features that I'm sure, Joe, once that comes out, we'll probably be working with you again on introducing those new features to the entire industry. But absolutely, it scales. That's the whole idea behind it, is starting small, starting simple, and just being able to build on that. So, yeah,
that's good. Two questions from Beth. The first is, has anyone been through an audit or inspection using the Greenlight Guru system?
Yeah, Beth, that's a common question. We absolutely hear that quite often. People, you want to make sure that our system has been proven, that it's been validated. Short answer is yes. The more detailed answer is yes. It's been audited by numerous ISO audits. It's been a part of numerous FDA inspections. Numerous companies all over the globe have gotten clearance with their devices in FDA in Europe. In fact, a decent number of our customers actually implemented Greenlight.Guru because of they got some 483 observations and some issues that they needed to mitigate and address in their paper systems and their legacy systems. So they actually implemented Greenlight.Guru, and as a result of dealing with some prior baggage from a compliance standpoint. But short answer is yes.
Her second question is, has anyone received 510K clearance using the system?
Yes, they have. I mean, my favorite story is a company. It's an early stage company, but we've got companies at all stages, all life cycles that have gotten clearances. But my favorite story is a company, Mylan, and their product is pretty cool. And it was a university technology that they decided to start a company around that. But first timers never been through this before. And they commented about how simple and easy the 510K process was, and that made me smile because I've been through this many times before, as I'm sure Beth has as well, and very seldom has somebody describe the 510K process as simple and easy, but it's good to hear that our platform made that just pretty straightforward for a startup that had never done this before.
Excellent. I have one more question. In the meanwhile, I just sent out a link to everyone on the call. That is page where you can get the slides from today's presentation, and you'll need to give me the afternoon or so to spool the video and get it up. I will send out an email when the replay is available. The last question is from Chris. She asks, how do you handle validation with the system? Do you offer a validation package?
Chris, that's a perfect question, and I love it because you're focused on making sure that you're addressing that Part 11 piece. And again, short answer is absolutely yes. And you shouldn't have to pay extra for that either. And that's why we provide a validation package to every single customer that we have, and we help our customers with that validation. All you have to do is ask for it. So that's the beautiful thing. But yes, it's all a package that we provide. It's all been reviewed by third-party experts in this space. So yeah, there's a whole package of information that we can provide you in that validation topic.
John, I love having you as a guest on these webinars. You paint a very compelling reason to get off paper, get off Excel spreadsheets, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the 100 people who are still on the call an hour and a half in, that this was very valuable. I thank you, and we will see you again online.
All right. Thank you, Joe. It's been great.
Thank you, everyone.